It was 3 a.m. when the pounding on my door started. Not a knock, a fist. I stumbled out of bed, half asleep, wearing the same sweatpants I'd fallen asleep in. When I opened the door, the cold night air rushed in, and there she was. My sister, hair a mess, eyes darting like she'd stolen something. She didn't say hi. Didn't explain. She just shoved a bundle into my arms. Baby. Wrapped in a faded blanket. Before I could even ask, she stepped back. I can't do this, she muttered. What do you mean you? Just, she's yours now. And then she was gone. Down the steps into the dark. I heard her car engine start, then fade into the distance. I looked down at the baby. She was barely a few weeks old, her tiny fingers clutching at the air like she was reaching for something that wasn't there. By the time the sun came up, I was sitting on my couch with her on my chest, trying to figure out if I'd just woken up from a nightmare. My parents came over that afternoon. I thought maybe they'd come to help. Instead, my mom sat down like she owned the place and said it straight. She's your burden now. No sympathy. No questions. No offer to share the responsibility. Just a final judgment like they were passing a sentence. I was barely 18. Still figuring out how to pay my own rent. Still eating ramen 3 nights a week. And now, I had a newborn. That night, I stood in the doorway of the tiny bedroom I'd cleared out for her. She was asleep in a second-hand crib I'd picked up from a neighbor down the hall. The hum of the old fan filled the silence. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I had it in me. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going to be the person who walked away from her. Not like my sister did. Not like my parents wanted me to. I didn't say anything to them after that. We just stopped talking. But I never forgot that night. And now, standing in a courtroom 20 years later, with my parents sitting across from me, I couldn't help but think. Do people ever remember the choices they made, when it's finally too late to undo them? The judge cleared his throat. Let's begin. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded. My parents were across from me looking like they'd aged 20 years overnight, but not in a way that made me feel sorry for them. They were here for custody. Of the girl I'd raised. Of the woman she'd become. She's our granddaughter, my father said, leaning forward like that fact alone should win them the case. We've been unfairly kept away from her for 2 decades. Unfairly. The word hit me like a bad joke. I thought about the nights I'd worked 2 jobs, stocking shelves from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., then running deliveries for a diner until noon, just so there was enough for her daycare bill. I thought about the time she got the flu in 2nd grade, and I missed 3 shifts in a row because she wouldn't sleep unless I was sitting beside her bed. My boss told me I was too young to be a father. I told him I didn't have time to explain. I thought about her 5th birthday. She wanted a cake shaped like a horse. I didn't have the money. I bought a plain cake and stayed up all night cutting it, shaping it, covering it with frosting until it looked almost right. She thought it was perfect. Not once in all those years did my parents call to ask how she was. Not once did they send a card. Not once did they knock on my door. And now they were here talking about rights. The judge's pen tapped against his notepad. Do you have evidence to support your claim? My lawyer glanced at me. We'd already agreed we wouldn't pull out the sealed file until the last possible moment. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice steady. They abandoned both of us. And they're here because she's 18 now in college and they think she's a prize worth having. My mother's lips curled. You've poisoned her against us. I almost laughed. But I didn't. Instead, I let my eyes drop to the table in front of me, where my hands rested. Hands that had carried her through every fever, every homework meltdown, every late-night phone call when she felt alone. I could feel the weight of the sealed file in my briefcase. It wasn't time yet. The judge turned to me again. Mr. Hayes, why have you resisted contact for this long? I took a slow breath. Because, I said, some people don't deserve the title they were born with. Have you ever realized a family name means nothing, if the people behind it mean nothing? The judge leaned back in his chair, eyes moving between me and my parents. Mr. Hayes, he said slowly, your parents claim you prevented a relationship between them and their granddaughter. That's a serious accusation. I nodded. It is. My father jumped in before I could say more. We had no idea where they were living. No phone number, no address. That one almost got a reaction out of me. Almost. Because the truth was, they'd known exactly where we were. Flashes came back. The time I saw their car drive past my apartment building when she was 6. The night I caught my father in the grocery store aisle, staring at us from the end cap before turning and walking away. They hadn't been kept away. They'd stayed away. I kept my voice even. Your Honor, the file I have contains records that explain everything. but I'm saving it for when the court is ready. My lawyer shifted beside me, a silent reminder, don't rush it. Let them keep talking. My mother folded her hands, her voice soft but dripping with a kind of practiced sadness. We were grieving. We made mistakes. But we love her. And she has a right to know her family. Grieving. That word stuck in my head. Not for what it meant, but for how casually she used it, as if love could be claimed 20 years late like an uncollected package. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Hayes, were you ever contacted about your granddaughter's needs in the past? No, she said quickly. I caught my lawyer's slight smirk. That answer had just set the trap a little tighter. Because the file in my briefcase didn't just hold my side of the story. It held theirs. Bank statements. Signed letters. Voicemails transcribed in full. Things they never expected anyone to keep. And every piece of it told the same truth. They'd known exactly where we were, exactly what we needed, and exactly when they could have stepped in. They just didn't. The judge tapped his pen again. We'll resume in 15 minutes. As the room began to empty, my father stood and walked past me. He leaned just close enough to mutter, "You're making a fool of yourself." I didn't even look up. We'll see. Because some truths once spoken out loud can't be taken back. And they had no idea how loud this one was about to be. When we came back from the recess, the room felt smaller. Quieter. The judge adjusted his glasses. Mr. Hayes, you mentioned you have a file that may be relevant. I'd like to see a portion of it now. My lawyer opened the briefcase, sliding out the thick, sealed envelope. The sound of the paper tearing seemed to echo against the courtroom walls. I didn't hand the whole thing over. Just the first section. This, I said, is a letter my mother wrote to my sister 3 days after leaving her baby with me. The judge skimmed it. His eyebrows rose. Then he read it again, slower this time. It wasn't long, barely a page. But it was enough. It said they knew where I was. That they'd let me handle it because they weren't ready to raise another child. It even mentioned how it would teach me responsibility. The judge looked up. Mrs. Hayes, did you write this? My mother's lips tightened. I don't remember. My father cleared his throat, trying to jump in. It was a difficult time. The judge raised a hand. Sir, I'm speaking to your wife. Silence. I watched them shift in their seats. For the first time all morning, they didn't look smug. They looked cornered. I glanced at the envelope, still heavy with everything else inside. Bank transfers showing they'd taken the money my sister was sending for her daughter and spent it on themselves. Voicemails from my father saying he couldn't deal with crying babies. Photos of my parents on vacations the same weeks I was begging for help with medical bills. I didn't pull those out yet. Timing was everything. The judge set the letter down. We'll proceed, but this casts your earlier statements in a different light. My parents avoided my eyes, staring at the table like it might open up and swallow them. From the corner of my vision I saw her, my daughter, sitting in the gallery. She hadn't looked at them once. Only at me. And in that moment I realized the outcome wasn't just about custody. It was about history. About making sure the record showed what really happened so she'd never doubt the truth. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, will the rest of this file provide more context? Yes, Your Honor, I said. Much more. Because once you start pulling at the thread of a lie, it's only a matter of time before the whole thing unravels. The judge's request came sooner than I expected. Mr. Hayes, he said, let's move on to the next portion of your evidence. I slid out the second packet from the envelope, neatly clipped, dated, and impossible to argue with. These, I told him, are bank statements from the years after my sister left. You'll notice regular deposits labeled, support for Emily. That was my sister sending money for her daughter. None of it reached us. The judge flipped through the pages, his expression tightening. Where did the funds go? To my parents' account, I said. And if you follow the withdrawals, you'll see payments for resorts in Florida, a new truck, and, I paused, glancing at my father, a cruise to the Bahamas. My mother shifted in her seat. We thought that money was repayment for what? I asked. For leaving me with a newborn? For vanishing when she had pneumonia and I was in the ER alone with her? The room stayed quiet. Even the clerk stopped typing for a second. I leaned back, keeping my voice level. Your Honor, I worked 2 jobs to cover everything. Rent, daycare, doctor visits. And all that time they were cashing checks meant for their granddaughter. The judge tapped the stack of papers. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes, these records are clear. Did you ever offer financial assistance directly to your son or granddaughter? Neither answered. My father rubbed his jaw. My mother stared at the floor. From the gallery I caught Emily's eyes. She wasn't smiling, but she gave the smallest nod, the kind that says, "I see it now." I turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, this isn't about keeping her from them out of spite. It's about protecting her from people who only show up when they think there's something to gain." My father finally spoke, his voice sharper now. "You're making us look bad." I didn't even flinch. "You did that yourselves." The judge stacked the statements and set them aside. "Continue, Mr. Hayes. What else is in this file?" I glanced at the last, unopened section, the part they didn't even know existed. "Proof," I said, "that will make their intentions here undeniable. Because once the mask slips, you can't put it back on." And theirs was already halfway to the floor. The judge gestured toward the envelope. "Mr. Hayes, let's see the rest." I reached inside, feeling the weight of the final packet. I'd carried this evidence for years, unsure if I'd ever use it. Today there was no doubt. "These," I said, sliding the papers forward, "are transcripts of voicemails my parents left over the years. Every one of them is time-stamped and saved." The judge began reading. The first was from when Emily was 7. "We're going to be in town this weekend, but it's not a good time to see her. Too much going on. Maybe next year." The second was from her 12th birthday. "Sorry we didn't send anything this year. Times are tight." That same week, their bank account showed a payment for a luxury cabin rental. The judge turned another page. His brow furrowed deeper. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "these are your parents' own words?" "Yes, Your Honor. Every last one." My father leaned forward, trying to keep his voice calm. "We didn't mean." But my lawyer cut in, "The meaning is in the pattern, sir." I added, "There's also this." I pulled a photo from the stack. Emily at age 10 sitting on the front steps with a backpack nearly bigger than she was. I'd taken it the morning she left for summer camp on a partial scholarship I'd scraped together. Tucked behind it was another photo taken the same day. My parents smiling in front of a brand new RV. The date stamp was identical. The judge set the photo down slowly. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, do you have a response?" They didn't answer. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her water. I glanced back at Emily again. She was watching them now, her jaw tight. I knew what she was thinking, that all the excuses, all the "we love you" speeches, meant nothing next to years of absence. The judge folded his hands. "This court is beginning to see a clear picture." I stayed quiet, letting the silence work for me. Silence had been my weapon for years. When they didn't show up, when they didn't call, when they acted like we didn't exist. Now that same silence was closing in on them. And I knew the next part of this file would do what 20 years of words never could, strip away the last of their defense. The judge's voice was steady. "Mr. Hayes, you may proceed with your final evidence." I took the last folder from the envelope, thinner than the rest but heavier in its own way. "This," I said, "is the part they never expected to see." Inside was a notarized letter from my sister, written 3 years before she passed away. The handwriting was shaky but clear. "If anything happens to me, I want Emily to stay with my brother. He's the only one who's been there for her. My parents were never there for me and they've done nothing for her. Please protect her from them." The judge read it twice. His eyes stayed on the paper for a long moment before he looked up. "This is signed, dated, and verified by a notary?" "Yes, Your Honor." My mother's face went pale. My father leaned back in his chair like someone had just pulled the ground out from under him. I wasn't finished. I slid one more document forward, a copy of my parents' own written statement from 20 years ago, given to Child Services when they declined custody. In black ink it said, "We cannot commit to raising a child at this stage of our lives." The judge set the papers down, his tone final. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, you came into this courtroom claiming you were kept from your granddaughter. The evidence overwhelmingly shows you chose to stay away, and that the child's mother entrusted her care to her uncle, not to you." For the first time in the entire trial, my parents didn't argue. My father's eyes stayed fixed on the table. My mother reached for his hand, but he didn't take it. In the gallery, Emily sat straighter. She wasn't smiling, but there was something in her eyes, relief maybe, or recognition. The judge turned back to me. "Mr. Hayes, based on this evidence, I will be making my ruling shortly. Is there anything else you'd like to add?" I shook my head. "No, Your Honor. The record says enough." Because it wasn't about speeches anymore. It was about letting the truth stand on its own, where no one could twist it, rewrite it, or hide it. And now it was written down in a place they could never erase. The judge's decision came quicker than I expected. "In the matter of custody," he said, "the court finds in favor of Mr. Hayes. Full guardianship remains with him. The petition from Mr. and Mrs. Hayes is denied. The words hung in the air, final and absolute. I didn't look at my parents right away. I didn't need to. The silence from their side of the room told me everything. The fight had gone out of them. The judge stacked the papers, then added, "This ruling will be part of the permanent record." Permanent? Exactly where it belonged. As the bailiff called the next case, I gathered my things. The envelope, now empty, slid easily into my briefcase. Years of proof, finally seen, finally heard. When I turned toward the gallery, Emily was already on her feet. She didn't rush me, didn't cry. She just stood there meeting my eyes. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Better than okay." We walked out together. The hallway outside the courtroom felt brighter somehow, like the air was lighter. For 20 years, we'd carried the weight of other people's choices. Now it was theirs to carry. Halfway down the hall, I heard my father's voice call my name. I stopped but didn't turn around. "We just wanted to be part of her life," he said. I finally looked back. "You had 20 years. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. My mother stood beside him, her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the floor. I didn't wait for more. Emily and I stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. The city noise felt distant, almost muted. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "It just makes the truth official." We crossed the plaza toward the street, passing strangers who had no idea what had just happened inside. That was fine. This wasn't about public spectacle. It was about making sure that, no matter what anyone said in the future, the facts were written down in a place where they could never be buried. As we reached the corner, I glanced back once. My parents had stepped out of the courthouse, standing just beyond the doors, looking out at nothing. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt nothing toward them at all. No anger, no longing, no need to explain. Just freedom. Some truths, once spoken, don't just change the story. They end it.